Hi everyone, welcome to my channel, welcome back to my channel if you're new here. In today's video I'm going to be telling you guys about some of the books that I hope to get throughout 2023. And I know this is like a bit of a risky thing to say, but I want these books to be ones I'm actually going to be getting to this year. Like I want to be able to kind of hold myself accountable. So in order to do that I kind of need to set like a realistic goal for myself. So these are 15 books that I definitely want to be getting to in 2023. They're all ones that I'm really excited about and I know that will prioritize like naturally, so I thought I'd tell you guys about them. And yeah, without further ado, let's get on to the video. So these are in no particular order at all, but I'll explain kind of like a little bit about them and then also why I want to pick them up. So the first book I have to mention here is The Year of Magical Thinking by Joan Didion. So I read my first Didion in 2022. I read The White Album. I gave it 3 stars. It's like basically an essay collection and I enjoyed some essays more than I did others. The ones that I did enjoy, I loved, either like super moving or just so beautifully and intricately written. Could acknowledge straight away that she was a brilliant writer. This is basically a non-fiction book about a year in Joan Didion's life. Daughter fell very ill and then her husband collapsed from fatal coronary. The husband died but the daughter did recover, but both these events like happened simultaneously. They were things that obviously like had a major impact on her life, particularly her life within that year, so it's just all about that experience. I do think this is going to be really sad. The thing that I was kind of missing a little bit from The White Album was like a personal touch of Didion's, but I think that we might get more of that in this book. I thought we would read the first lines out of each of these books as I am going through them because I did that in a previous TBR and I really enjoyed it and we found some beautiful lines. It could be fun. Life changes fast. Life changes in the instant. You sit down to dinner and life as you know it ends. The question of self-pity. Those were the first words I wrote after it happened. Wow. Fantastic. Next up I have another author who I also want to read like more work from, and that is Tahereh Jenkins Reid. So I've read 4 books by Tahereh Jenkins Reid and I've loved them all. I've read them as they've been released, and so I'm really excited to go back to her backlist and see how her writing's kind of changed across the years. I do think she's improved as time's gone on. I've seen that even in the 4 books that I've read of hers. So this is One True Love. 2 people, Emma and Jesse, and Jesse goes missing in a helicopter accident. He's presumed dead. Years later, once Emma has kind of like grieved him and attempted to move on with her life, fallen in love with another person, Jesse shows up. It turns out he didn't actually die in the crash and he wants to come back into her life, and it's about what she does in this situation. Obviously she is overjoyed about the fact that her husband's return has also like kind of forged this new life for herself and found someone else who she also really loves. I don't know how this is going to end, but I do think people seem quite satisfied with the ending. I'm really intrigued to see how it goes. I'm finishing up dinner with my family and my fiance when my husband calls. I think that's truly like one of the best first lines I've ever read in my life. Next up I have a book by Ottessa moshfegh and it is My Year of Rest and Relaxation. So this book absolutely took the internet by storm in the previous year and the year before that and whatever. I bought it a few months ago, but I think that it could be a little bit heavy and that's the reason why I've been kind of putting it off, and I hope I can kind of like face it in 2023. So this follows a girl, I think she's unnamed, and she lives on the Upper East Side of New York. Is super wealthy, super privileged and everything, but she is suffering with depression, and she has this theory that if she takes all this medication and she just sleeps for the year, then she'll be recovered when she wakes up, and that's her way of kind of coping with it. So you kind of follow that year in her life. Apparently it's super boring but also amazing, so I'm really interested to see how that goes. Like I said, this is quite dark and can be a little bit triggering for people who experience depression, so I am kind of hesitant to pick this one up. I also would like to see like some good depression rap because I haven't read anything that's actually had that like specifically mentioned. I already know the first line of this because I already put it in a DBR. Interesting. Whenever I woke up, night or day, I'd shuffle through the bright marble foyer of my building and go up the block and around the corner where there was a bodega that never closed. Kind of sets the tone for the story. I'm just interested in Ottessa moshfegh's books in general because hold on one second. Another book that I want to read in 2023 is Lapvona, which is by the same author. I got this for my birthday in 2022. I wanted to pick up in the winter, so I'm hoping maybe over these next coming months I can read this book. Apparently it's super weird. It's very kind of gruesome and grotesque in sections. Interested to see how that plays out because I've never read anything kind of like that. I think it could be very good. This is about a little boy who lives in a medieval village, so it's kind of like historical fiction. Mixtures of kind of fantasy in it because I think we follow an older woman. She's a village midwife, so she's kind of raised all the children in the village, and I believe that she has kind of witchcraft abilities or something along those lines. It's also about this super greedy lord who rules over the village. I don't really know much about this. I'm kind of excited to go into it a little bit blind because if it's going to be like a little bit wild, then that could be fun. I'll let you guys know how I feel about both of these books and which I prefer and whatever. These like neon colours, stunning. I've never held these up together, but they look gorgeous alongside each other. I don't think this is going to top One True Love, but we'll see. The bandits came again on Easter. I'm interested, but I'm not obsessed. Like I don't have to know, but I want to know. So the next book I have to mention is a little bit different, but this is a reread actually, and that is Caraval by Stephanie Garber. So I recently found the second and third books in this trilogy for a really good price, so I decided to pick them up. But I read Caraval in 2018 and I haven't read any of the other books in the series, so I do think I need to like refresh myself and reread this book in order to get on with the rest of the series. Caraval, I remember really enjoying it. I actually gave it a 4.5 stars, but it's honestly been so many years that I'm not sure how I feel now, but I do hope it is just as magical as I remember. These two sisters get invited to this circus called Caraval, which they wanted to go to their entire lives. They turn up there. One of the sisters is actually kind of like the theme of that year's Caraval, so she's part of the game and the game is trying to find her. It's a very kind of tricky game with kind of like deadly consequences. It is quite dark, but also it's beautifully magical because it's this entire world and has this great atmosphere within the circus. So I'm excited to reread Caraval, see what I think, and then pick up the rest of the books in the series. It took 7 years to get the letter right. I'm sorry if the angle has changed slightly. I had to stop filming for a second, but we're back. So the next book I have to mention is a non-fiction actually, and that is Nobody Keeps the Score by an author whose name I'm not going to try to pronounce because I know I'm going to butcher it. I'll read you the back of this book because it sounds absolutely incredible. The cover. Come on. This is Matisse. Okay. The effects of trauma can be devastating for sufferers, their families and future generations. Here, one of the world's experts on traumatic stress offers a bold new paradigm for treatment, moving away from standard talking and drug therapies and towards an alternative approach that heals mind, brain and body. This has fantastic reviews. I've worked in the non-fiction department of a bookstore over Christmas and I saw this book every single day and I used to flip through it and it just sounded brilliant. The little extracts I read from it and everything like that. It's basically broken up into like little kind of headings with like little mini kind of chapters, I guess. So what I was thinking is like I could just have this book going throughout the entire year, then I just read like a little passage here and there so I can kind of like really study it and take it in. I think this is going to be stunning. My word for the year is peace, and I do think that this book is going to help support that word and encourage it. I'm not sure what the first line is going to be like in this, so we will have to see. The Tuesday after the 4th of July weekend, 1978, was my first day as a staff psychiatrist at the Boston Veterans Administration Clinic. This man is being like, I'm qualified. You should know. Next book I have is a very different tone, and that is Beach Read by Emily Henry. So I just want to read all of Emily Henry's work, but I do want to read them in publication order. So I own all 3 of her books that are currently out: Beach Read, People We Meet on Vacation, and Book Lovers. But her 4th book, which I'm blanking on the title now. Nope, it's not going to come to me. It's coming out in spring, and so I want to have read like at least one of her books before then. But I do want to film like individual reading vlogs for each of these books and give spoilers and everything like that, because I think that'd be fun. And I think I'm really going to enjoy her books. Basically they're kind of like romances, but they are more like literary fiction romances, so they're very well written and everything like that, which I am excited to read. January and Gus are far more uncommon than you'd think. I need to write bestsellers before summer ends. The result, I bet to swap genres and see who gets published first. The risk, in telling each other's stories, their worlds might be changed entirely. Really hyped. I have a fatal flaw. Why is that like so reminiscent of the Secret Histories first line? Interesting. Then the next book I have to mention is a modern classic, and that is Nadja by André Breton. So this is a French classic. I bought this copy in Shakespeare and Company bookstore. I just think it's gorgeous, and I've heard absolutely incredible things about this because this book kind of paved a new way for French literature, but kind of literature in general. Biggest kind of like surrealist work, French surrealist work. Nadja, a mysterious, unpredictable young woman with whom the narrator becomes obsessed over a chance encounter on the street. So this Nadja is like, she's there but she's not there. I think the idea is that she's only sustained through our like protagonist's mind and fantasies. It's only a short little book and it's filled with lots of pictures. I think it's quite fragmented and things like that. I'm just really intrigued by it and I think it's gonna be fantastic. Who am I? If this once I were to rely on a proverb, then perhaps everything would amount to knowing whom I haunt. If you watch my What I Got for Christmas video, you would know that I want to read this book, and that is The Toll by Neal Shusterman. So this is the 3rd book in the Scythe series. I love the Scythe series. Gave the first book 4 stars, gave the second book 5 stars. So I'm really scared / excited for this book. I don't want it to let me down, but I do think that it could be absolutely fantastic as well. It's giant, so being also put off by that. I've owned this book for a couple of years now, but I've been recently inspired to pick it up because I received the kind of little prequel-y book. It goes after the series, but it's a book of kind of like the past of this world, so I definitely do need to like get a move on with the series. The first book Scythe is set in this kind of utopian world where every single kind of illness is cured. Basically you can't die. In order to kind of like control the population, you have these people called Scythes who are elected or like chosen by the government. Well, not the government, it's kind of this thing past the government, but this like governing body basically are in charge of kind of humanely killing people. When they live kind of the equivalent of like 3 lifespans, they're kind of killed, and it's not like a big deal. But of course, the minute someone's in charge of deciding who lives and who dies, things become extremely corrupt. It's a fantastic series. It's very kind of philosophical, but it's also just like a fantastic kind of dystopian sci-fi book. There was no warning. full stop. There's so much drama in that series. Next book I have to mention is another dystopian book, but this one is very much dystopian, not utopian, and that's Ignite Me by tahereh. So I actually want to read the entire Shaft series across 2023. It's a big thing to say because I've still got quite a few books left. I've just finished the second book, so I'm up to the little novella in between the second and third book, and then I can pick up this book, which is the third book, and then the fourth and fifth and sixth book, as well as the novellas in between those. So I've got a lot to read, but I'm enjoying it so far. They are all quick reads, so I think that I could manage to get through these. Shaft follows Juliet. She lives in this dystopian world, and Juliet's thing is that no one can touch her, because if they do, they get very sick / die. There's like a love triangle, there's like a revolution in the world, you know, the whole thing. It's just a classic dystopian, but it's kind of like a little bit of a guilty pleasure. I am an hourglass. I like that. My 17 years have collapsed and buried me from the inside out. My legs feel full of sand and stapled together, my mind overflowing with grains of indecision. Choices unmade and impatient as time runs out of my body. Stunning. But next up we have another modern classic, and that is Frenchman's Creek by Daphne du Maurier, about this woman who, I think her husband is like, they're not getting on basically, and so she retreats to his Cornish estate to seek peace and solitude away from London, but there she finds this man who's a French pirate and she falls in love with him. I just think it sounds awesome. Like, it is basically about an affair, but also like, it just sounds like a great adventure. I literally sound like I'm justifying an affair. I'm not, I promise. I just think the plot of this sounds really entertaining and great, aside from the affairs. I'd wanted to read this in the summer, I didn't get around to it, so I'm hoping that 2023 is the year that I do finally read it. When the east wind blows up Helford River, the shining waters become troubled and disturbed, and little waves beat angrily upon the sandy shores. Beautiful, just like, there's so much imagery in that line. And next we have another French modern classic, and that is Bonjour to Ottessa by Françoise Sagan. It kind of again shifted the people's view of literature, and particularly within French literature, but also people's view of women, and that's why I'm really excited about it. So we follow this girl, and it's about her kind of summer down the French Riviera with her father and her father's mistress. It's a very short little book. This is actually 2 books combined by the same author. It's only like this long. So it's a really tiny little book, but I do want to read it for a video, so this is one that I actually like 100% have to get to in 2023, and if I don't, something will have majorly gone wrong. It's gonna happen. This strange new feeling of mine, obsessing me by its sweet languor, is such that I'm reluctant to dignify it with the fine, solemn name of sadness. These French classics, man, they're like really doing a lot. I've really been enjoying kind of like feminist themes within, or feminist theory within the books I've been reading. I found a lot of that within the Joan Didion book, like just absolutely. The Françoise Sagan book, I'm thinking will have themes of that, and then another book that should have themes of that is The Woman Destroyed. This cover, first of all, like, can we just, stunning. These editions are gorgeous, they're by Pantheon. But yeah, this is a collection of 3, I think, short stories by one of the greatest and feminist theorists of all time. Each of these 3 stories follow 3 women's different lives and kind of just like the experience of being a woman, probably particularly during this time. Has my watch stopped? No, but its hands do not seem to be going around. Interesting. I mean, that's not really fair, because I feel like with a short story it's a little bit different. I think the whole story is going to be the point with that, not the like individual writing within it, you know? Does that make any sense? We will see. Maybe I'm just completely wrong. Then we have 2 more books to mention. So the first one is another kind of feminist theory book, and that is My Body. The author is Rata on Instagram. She's an Instagram model / just a model in general. She's famous for her body. So this is all about the way people have viewed her and her experience with being viewed like that, growing up in an industry that's like entirely about kind of her physical form and nothing to do with her as a person. And it's a collection of essays, and I've heard amazing things. It's gonna be great, I think. When you were born, my mother begins, the doctor held you up and said, look at the size of her. She's beautiful. And you were. She smiles. I've heard this story many times. Again, it's like an essay, so. And then lastly, we have a dark academia book, and that is Night House by Leah Bardugo. I'm really excited to pick this book up. I actually bought it in release week in 2019. So it's actually a major issue that I've never read it, but I'm really excited to get to it because Hellbent, the sequel, came out, or is coming out very soon. If I'm going to enjoy this, I'm going to want the hardcover of Hellbent to match, and I'm going to only have like a year to do that. So I do kind of have to read this over the next year. But yeah, this is the Dark Academia following Alex. She gets invited to Yale to study, and while she's there, she's meant to be kind of keeping watch over Yale's kind of secret societies and monitoring the activity within them. I think there are like kind of like ghosts and things in this book. It sounds amazing. I've heard mixed reviews, but some of my friends have really loved this. Alex hurried across the wide alien plain, boots thudding over the flat squares of clean concrete. No, that's a no from me. That's the final book in my 2023 TBR. So I hope you guys really enjoyed this video. 15 books I'm really excited to get to. Let me know what books you want to get to / your thoughts on any of these books, because of course I will like prioritise them based on people's opinions, because I've got to like hype them up in my mind if I'm going to pick them up. If you'd like to keep track of whether I do actually read them and look out for these kind of reading vlogs that are coming, you can subscribe of course, and please give this video a thumbs up if you did enjoy it, because I'd love to know that you did. Thank you guys so much for watching. Currently I'm posting 2 times a week, which is crazy. I've never done that in my life. I've never done that in the history of my channel. If you want lots of content, you can stick around. So I'll see you guys in literally a couple of days. Bye.